How different does something need to be for a new design patent? Well, it's the same. Here's the thing: it's the same standard as a utility patent, in that it has to be new and non-obvious. But it becomes rather difficult to see or to think of like what actually is non-obvious in a design. So, I mean, like if someone had a design like this, that except maybe this, this section that includes the ribs or indentations, maybe it was like half the height instead of this full height. Like, is that not obvious? Like someone who's designing bottles, would it be obvious to them to do something similar to this, but do a bunch less of those indentations? I don't know. I mean, it gets really tricky. And the truth is, in my experience, it doesn't really take much difference to get a design patent granted. I've seen design patents granted on really simple shapes, and I would think that that would be obvious, but apparently the examiners, they really look for things that are close to identical. Um, and yeah, and so then the in terms of getting a patent, then it um, it doesn't take much typically. But remember that patentability and infringement are different. So you can get a patent and still be infringing an existing patent. Same thing with designs. You can get a design patent and still be infringing an existing design patent. So, just you being able to get your patent doesn't mean that you're in the clear. So then I guess that's going to the, you had asked a follow-up question about differentiating from an existing one. Um, but now this is the standard for how infringement works. So infringement is about having a substantially similar appearance to an ordinary observer. So, it's like you take you take the patent drawings, and then you have the thing that you've done, which is maybe a bit different, has this, as you said, a different angle on the ribs, etc. Would it be substantially similar to an ordinary observer? And if the answer is yes, then that would be infringement. And again, that's pretty vague. And that's something that gets left up to a jury typically is, well, does it have a substantially similar appearance? And so it's impossible for me to answer like, well, just changing the angles, would that be okay? I mean, like I said, in my experience, in terms of getting the patent, getting a design patent, it probably would get you the patent because they don't really go too far in examining for whether it's a non-obvious improvement as a practical matter. I mean, they're supposed to, but in my experience, they don't. But in terms of infringement, is that going to be different enough? Hard to say. It's vague, and that vagueness can work for you and against you. If you're if you're the person who has the patent, then the vagueness can work for you in that someone who wants to copy your idea can't get the green light to go ahead. Like, they can't very easily get a green light where it's clear that they're not infringing. So if they're at all risk averse, they'd probably resist copying that product because, like no one can tell them for sure that they're not infringing. So vagueness can work in your favor, or the vagueness of this test for infringement can work in your favor. And then, so you ask, like, how would I then advise a client with regard to similar designs? And again, that depends on the circumstance. But there's one thing to understand about this too, which is when it often requires that us to take a deeper look, is that the test is substantially similar to an ordinary observer, but it's always subject to the prior art. It's always subject to what existed before. So we can't look at this patent for this bottle with these indentations in a vacuum. We have to look to what existed before this patent was granted. if patents were very close, that existed before this patent even were very close to it, then the protection becomes rather thin. And so it doesn't extend as far as you would expect. So like with a microwave oven, like you might look at a patent for a microwave oven and say, well, yeah, this is infringing. It's just like it. It has a door and it has a keypad. It looks just like the drawings, until you realize that all microwave ovens have doors and keypads. And therefore, it's kind of like your, um, you know, like once you see what other people have done before, that could really limit the extent to which, I mean, we could put it this way, that you're impressed by the patent before and say, oh wow, that's really close to that design. Oh well, okay, I see now that design wasn't that original to begin with, and therefore it limits the way in which it's going to be interpreted. So again, this could all get kind of complicated, and it's more of a case by case situation. uh, yeah, a lot of times I have to say that's where my gut instinct on it comes into play in terms of how far it's going to go. And often, though, that gut instinct is informed by what existed before, like us doing some research to see what other people have done before, so that I can then kind of give more of that instinctual response about whether it would be infringing or not, and whether a patentability is possible. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. We do this every Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. You can click the link in the post to be invited to join us on the Zoom, so you could then ask me anything about patents and trademarks.